Welcome, I'm Cécile Escap, Managing Director of Eduniversal, and this is a coffee talk at Eduniversal. We start with this new format a few months ago in September because we really want to have a new moment, a new opportunity to keep the contact with all the regions. As you know, our annual convention is now virtual for 2 years. And we are really missing this connection with the campuses, with all the staff of the communities. And it's our mission also to help the higher education community to keep connected, to share. And this tool and this moment is really for that, for you. So if so you have some proposals of topics for the next months, we are here. So this is also your moment. Today, we are having a special discussion about the Middle East region and how the universities, the business schools have reacted and are facing the pandemic. So thank you to Nehme Azoury. Nehme is the director of the scientific committee for this zone, for the Middle East. And he has organized this session for all of you. He's going to lead the session and present the different outstanding speakers we have today. Before we start, I will remember you that you can react whenever you want using the chat. And the speakers or myself are going to have a look at these questions or comments. So don't hesitate and don't wait for the last minutes to use this tool to create connection. This is also an open discussion, even if we are going to start with some presentation and visions and opinions and sharings from the speakers. So we have 1 hour to have this discussion, and I wish you a very useful and nice moment. So Nehme, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Cécile. Thank you for Eduniversal. I will start at the first to allow my express deepest thanks for inviting this eminent speaker. And I will present this colleague and this speaker. Hello? Okay. I will present at the first Dr. Amal Mohammad al-Maliki. Dr. Amal Mohammad is the founding dean of the College of Humanity and Social Sciences at Hamad bin Khalifa University, Qatar Foundation. Dr. Malki was recognized as QF Achiever in Qatar Foundation Global Campaign in 2011 and was the first Muslim to be invited as a keynote speaker at City University in New York after 9/11. She has lectured at Durham University, and she was selected by the Ministry for Europe and Foreign Affairs in Paris as the future personality for gender equality from Qatar. Okay, nice to meet you, Dr. Amal.
Lovely to meet you as well.
Thank you. We are proud. Okay. Dear Steve, a colleague, first of all, Steve is the president of Harvey Education Management and Chief Learning Officer for SuccessFinder, a Montreal-based HR talent, very known, former dean of John Molson School of Business at Concordia University, okay, dean of the Williams School of Business at Bishop University. He made a big success in this faculty, in this school, and he was the former dean of AUB. He was a friend and very known in the business sector and in the academic sector. Nice to see you, Steve.
Thank you for the invitation, Harvey, and the friendship. Wonderful to be with you.
Thank you, Steve. George is an older friend, and we work together in the Holy Spirit University. Now we are proud he's the president of American University of the Middle East. He was the previous provost of Holy Spirit University. We worked together. He received his PhD in business administration in Montesquieu University in 2004 and earned postgraduate certificate in learning and teaching in higher education from University of Chester and completed the professional education certificate in the Institute for Educational Management at the Harvard Graduate School in Education in 2019. Hi, George.
Hi, Nehme. Good to see you. It's been a while.
Okay. Proud to. Okay.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you.
I will make my introduction. After that, I will let you make your presentation for 10 minutes. And if there is any question, any debate, okay, our speaker will be ready. I'm the coordinator. I'm not the speaker. As a speaker, I make just the introduction. Okay. We are talking about the education system in the world. The education system in the world was make a radical change. The COVID-19 pandemic brought this change in faster. It introduced even the most traditional education system to a virtual learning experience, an experience which was proven to improve student communication and speaking skills as live online session, platform, Zoom, Teams, etc. Students had the opportunity to benefit from an alternative type of exam that went beyond traditional tests. This constructive change, and maybe it be negative, based on differentiated instruction and project-based learning, boosted student engagement and motivation. As many schools and universities have reopened in various parts of the world, lessons were drawn and the various stakeholders learned how to adjust to the situation and embrace the numerous advantages that distance learning has to offer, like being adaptable and current with the latest technology and learning to be more independent and organized. We all saw that there is always a silver lining in every crisis. The education world will never go back to what it used to be. This is my opinion. Most educational institutions and business schools around the world who have reopened their door will focus on the advantages and the opportunities of virtual learning while keeping a fair portion of traditional and face-to-face learning, which allows the closeness, the emotional, the human interaction that we have longed for. Without further also, I will leave the floor to the panel and the expert, and we start by Dr. Amal Mohammad Al-Maliki.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. So I'm the Dean of the College of Humanities and Social Sciences at Hamad bin Khalifa University. I just need to contextualize this to everyone so they would understand where I'm coming from. And speaking about the MENA region and the MENA context, we need to admit that it's one of the most diverse regions politically, economically, and even culturally. And the same has been evident when we reflect on the global pandemic's impact on education. COVID-19 has, and I believe still to a certain degree, has impacted education in the MENA directly and indirectly. The impact on education, as millions were kept out of schools and colleges, they were forced to close their classrooms and shift to remote learning. While some had the infrastructure to make this move possible and smooth at such a short period of time, others were not as lucky and successful. Students in conflict zones and in occupied territories, and among the displaced, whom are usually at the bottom of any crisis management agenda, have suffered the most of such interruption in education. An important point I need to stress on today is the fact that educational systems are never disconnected from their political, economic, and cultural context, and thus national educational agendas are devised. However, how has the pandemic impacted these national agendas? I believe that the main challenge that education is facing in the MENA region is not an educational one, but a moral one. Discussions recently revolved around the how. How do we embrace the new digital normal? as a medium through online hybrid education, the differences maybe between the synchronous, asynchronous education. What role will artificial intelligence play to ensure the safety and security, but how will virtual realities also substitute real life experiences so we still offer our students the international exposure and vocational training? However, the conversation needs to shift from the how to the what. What should we be teaching in the new normal? To answer this, I believe we should look at what should we have been teaching at the core of our curricular in our region that we evidently failed to do so. The pandemic has exposed the fragility of our internal systems, whether educational, economic, or social. We have witnessed a clear setback in rights and freedoms around the world, which had a grave impact on our region in specific. The global pandemic had a unifying force hitting all corners of the globe. And we saw that in how, for example, how the youth in our region reacted to global movements such as Black Lives Matter, for example, right? The younger generation, like we saw in Tunisia, reacted to and grouped together, and their voices echoed across the region. This gives us an indication that education failed to address racial justice when social media, the medium, did. We also know that gender-based violence has emerged as a serious matter in our societies. Not that it didn't exist before, but the pandemic on one hand exacerbated it, but on the other hand managed to shed the light on it. As you all know, the UN has coined violence against women as the shadow pandemic, which brought to the surface the systematic discrimination and the societal disadvantages that women face within their societies that intensified and usually intensify during upheavals and instabilities of any sort, global pandemic being one. Allow me to elaborate here a bit on the disproportionate impact that the pandemic had on women in our region in specific. A recent report entitled The Impact of COVID-19 on Gender Equality in the Arab Region assesses the impact, but also states facts like, in the healthcare, women dominate the healthcare systems in the Arab region as nurses, midwives, and support staff, making them more vulnerable to contracting COVID-19. Women receiving limited or no sexual or reproductive services in our region. Mental and psychological stress and pressure on women has intensified and increased. Women are usually the traditional caregivers in our society as well. Financially, women will lose over 700,000 jobs, increasing poverty and unemployment. Unpaid labor increased and domestic workers are left vulnerable. Other negative impacts cover lack of access to internet, therefore deprivation from sources of communication, information, and education. Nearly half of the females' population of 84 million is not connected to the internet, nor has access to mobile phones in our region. The gendered impact of the pandemic on women's lives and livelihoods gives us a clear indication that education didn't really take it into consideration when their agendas were devised and their curricular were put in place, and that we need to invent new educational curricular and tools and follow innovative approaches if we are to address the gender discrimination and gender violence on a deeper level. Other matters that educational systems around our region need to focus on post-COVID is mental well-being. In 2019, burnout was recognized by the World Health Organization as a legitimate health diagnosis. This is a serious issue that was also exacerbated during the lockdown, when the divide between, of course, home and work disappeared, as we all know. And to add to that, we're going through a new digital derivative, which is called now the online or digital fatigue. If we take the mental health issues arising and the anxieties that our younger generation are living through and juxtapose it with the fact that more than half of our population in the MENA are under 30 years of age, we have a serious problem. In conclusion, our new normal, which can be described as VUCA, which stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. But I agree, there is a big degree of uncertainty in what we're living through and the new normals we're going through, but there are things that are certain, one of which is our educational systems need serious reform. For it, we don't think it prepares students for what they are as shared humans, such as climate change, for example, building just and free societies. Then the vitality, and if they don't do that, basically the vitality of these systems will be undermined. And I don't think we would live through post-COVID era. I believe that education or education's moral compass needs to be readjusted. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Amal, for your valuable presentation and this added value. Thank you. Okay, dear Steve, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, the screen is mine, I guess, right? It's
yes.
The new way of introducing.
Are you in Montreal now?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Are you in Montreal?
I'm in Montreal. Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, a little bit snowy relative to the way that you're enjoying the weather right now.
Thank you, Steve.
Listen, thank you for the invitation. I'm pleased to be here, and I'm always pleased to be still connected to the Middle East in heart, if not in presence. And it gives me great pleasure to share some of my experience, perhaps partly as my prior experience as dean in the region, but also in education for many years, and now continuing to be involved in education on a regular basis. When I was asked to join the panel, I was asked to provide a title, what it is that I was speaking about. So perhaps to put it into context, I can share that with you and begin to elaborate on it. And my title was Educational Providers That Understand Integration and Their Added Value Can Thrive in a Post-COVID Era. And the notion here is one where our future, given the unprecedented times that we are in, are really anyone's bet, okay? No matter the soothsayers, the clairvoyants, the crystal ball readers, the consultants that are making trillions of dollars right now, the reality is nobody really knows what that future looks like. The world has always been changing and evolving, and education has been responding and adapting, but we've never seen something so massive, unrehearsed, and to use Max Gladwell's words, perhaps we're at a tipping point in the world, but also within education, where things will begin to change. And I think those changes will happen not from any predictable means, but based on our collective actions and reactions. In other words, we will see fallout based on how we collectively, worldwide and regionally, decide to move forward. So I'm going to hesitate from providing recommendations and views about specific things that we should be doing moving forward and some of the things that we have done to adjust, and rather focus on some of the things that we need to introspect on in education in order to be well prepared to adapt to the future going forward. So I don't have any particular predictions, a favorite axe to grind, or a pet project or the next best thing to propose, but rather some cautions on areas that I know education could fall back on and become problematic if we don't heed to them. Two things that I think are central to our ability to adapt in educational institutions into this new world era is our ability to engage in what I call integrative practices, and to simultaneously disintegrate from some of the traditions and things that we have done in the past. So there's integration, and then there's a collateral of disintegration. And to a certain extent, perhaps echoing a little bit what Amal just mentioned, is what is our value added as an educational institution in this integration that we're talking about. I'm going to take those two concepts apart a little bit and talk about why they're important. But generally, they're important because we as educational institutions and as senior administrators, some of us have become very familiar with the notion of resistance within the tradition of change, right? The notion is that educational institutions are fortresses, they're ivory towers, they're places where knowledge is sacred, guarded, and, if you wish, practiced by the high priest of knowledge to a certain extent. Those walls have been crumbling, those Eiffel Towers have been climbed, and content has become, if you wish, much more democratized. And we've seen that, and we've seen it emerging, and we see it even more now that we are moved into a virtual world. So when I talk about integration, I talk about integration from the perspective of it potentially impacting us in a variety of ways, but let me just focus on the notion of structure, relationships, partnerships, and content, and the delivery when we talk about integration. Now, structure, if you stop and you think about it, who invented the notion that a bachelor's degree must be 120 credits? What are 120 credits anyways? What makes it necessary that there are 5 courses per semester in America that make sense and 10 courses per year that if you do it over 4 years equals a bachelor's degree? What science is this based on? If you look at it, it is basically tradition that has come about and has lasted and has become reified in our thinking moving forward. And therefore, what I'm suggesting is that the very structures that we depend upon, that we insist are critical to the future of our institutions, are built on foundations of which we have little to no evidence of their importance. Nowhere have we really stopped to investigate what it is that a person should be leaving our institutions with, and to what degree, in order to be able to credential them as having something of some value to bring somewhere or to bring into life generally. So the whole structure of what education is about, perhaps is a time where we need to think about, because that structure, that very structure, is being challenged. If you look at the Googles of the world, the Microsofts and the others that are providing their own credentialing and rival degrees and an opportunity for credentialing for working that are equivalent to our degrees in the institution, they may not take away education completely, but they are an indication that the world is responding to these structures in different ways and suggesting that there are better and different ways of doing things. Opportunity is the way that I look at this. Move on to the notion of relationships and partnerships. And business schools have been quite evolved, I think, in forming a lot of partnerships. We've formed partnerships repeatedly. I've formed partnerships with some of the people in the room when I was a dean. Ultimately, these are things that we did. But the reality is we've formed partnerships with like-minded institutions, academic institution to academic institution. The relationships we have are with people we are comfortable with working with at integrating into the future, integrating our degrees, joint degrees, certificates, and degree matches, and so forth. Transfer agreements. These kind of things are like-minded integration. When I'm talking about integration, perhaps what we need to start thinking about, and the world is pushing us to focus on, is integration across sectors, like with the educational providers, with civil society, doing the kind of partnerships that are really going to change the nature of the content, which is the next point that I want to talk about. The days are gone where the professors are the sacred guardians of the content that they deliver. Content is now free, available, and democratized to a large extent. There is still some knowledge that is, of course, new, novel, and derives from research. That is something that, of course, continue to be provided within university environments. But how might we recognize that that is the new reality and change the way that we think about our role as professors? Maybe we are now facilitators of an experience. When I was a business dean, I often talked about the idea that we need to move away from the mentality of having a business school education and rather being responsible for providing a business school experience. That is a huge shift in your thinking by realizing that your responsibility is no longer to educate or impregnate the mind with great jewels of information, but rather to guide and journey a person through an experience of gathering information, having experiences, learning, discussion, dialoguing in ways that enable you to become something more than when you entered the organization and achieve some objectives that we have both agreed to. So the content and our role in curating that content becomes extremely important. I think that becomes something that we will face the post-pandemic much more readily to the extent that we believe that we can adapt and change those things. I would also then finish with this whole notion of integration with the notion of delivery. We are now all keyed in. There's no question. We've been forced to be keyed into online learning and the virtual learning environment. But the resistance that we had up until this point 2 years ago, were some institutions and many regions, including the Middle East, that online learning was not equivalent to real in-person learning, has now been thrown out. It's exploded. Everyone has realized that the notion of in-person learning has to coexist with other forms and perhaps integrate with other forms of learning going forward. If we think the future is exclusively to focus on offering better digital virtual experiences, we've missed the opportunity to realize that that is just a foundation. There is much more than technology when it comes to education. It is a facilitator and not an end goal in and of itself. So I guard those institutions who invest massively in thinking that they're going to offer 120 credits at an undergraduate level and completely offer that degree themselves without fully integrating, having real partners, and using, of course, the technology to deliver. What's wrong with an institution recognizing that in certain courses they are best partnered to be delivered by someone else than themselves and their professors? And this is mixing those different forms of integration that I've talked about. So this is where I kept pushing my own institutions, and I think that we need to keep pushing our institutions going forward to better integrate. On the notion of value added, if we are a part of that overall life experience that people have, and we are part of a life experience, education, what is our value added to the life experience? Why would someone come to our institution versus another institution, or come to an institution to begin with? Why do we exist? And it has to be more than the stuff that I've been hearing ourselves saying over and over again. We provide critical thinking. We provide an opportunity to read and write better. We provide an opportunity for people to become good citizens. That is tired language, in my view. Maybe it's time that we start asking ourselves, what is it that others value, that they want to see us delivering and working with them as we provide them with that experience going forward? So when we talk about value added, please, let's talk about value added beyond what we value and ask ourselves what it is that those who we are interacting with and working with value most. And for each of our institutions, much to what Amal was saying, in the Middle East, for certain groups, it may be very different because of the social fabric that they are dealing with, that what their value added is different than in Montreal or is different than in Sydney, Australia, and so forth. That value added needs to be fully inclusive and not exclusive to the ivory tower, or if you wish, the monastery that we've created in education, the view that education is to be protected and kept sacred by a fair few. So to me, those are the kind of things that we will face a better future by being aware of, by self-inspection of how well we are integrating and what value added we have. I don't have predictions. I just have forewarnings that unless we deal with these things, there will be challenges for us as institutions going forward. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you. I believe in your comment, truly, and we don't know the future, but sure it will be different. Maybe one day we will have a Meta University or a Facebook University, and maybe we are going more specialized. We don't have a PhD, more certificate, less time. Everything will be changed. Sure. Thank you, Steve. Hope to see you. Maybe it's better to see you in Montreal, better than Beirut. I think so.
Maybe.
Maybe. Thank you. Zamil, Dr. Yahchouchi, Professor Yahchouchi, are you here?
Nehme.
Okay. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Nehme.
Okay.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me for this very beautiful session. And happy to see you all, and happy to share with you my experience in Kuwait, the American University of the Middle East. So I'll be more focusing on how COVID changed things positively at the institutional level, at the level of teaching and learning, at the level of our institutional practices, and how it created a new reality, and how I think And I believe things will be moving on for the future. But first, to give some contextual information about the university and who we are. AUM is the largest private institution in Kuwait with about 11,000 students. We are ranked #1 by QS and Times Higher Education in Kuwait and between the top universities in the region. We can say that we are the students and parents' first higher education institution's choice in Kuwait. And all our programs and our business college is affiliated from the AACSP. The engineering programs are affiliated by ABIT. We are focused institutions on two areas, the engineering and business. And also we are highly invested in research. We have a very active research center in robotics, nanotechnologies, and especially in the areas of science and technologies and business. Well, we value a lot diversity here at the university, and we have people, faculty, staff from 60 different nationalities on campus. We believe that we bring internationalization and international experience, but on our campus in Kuwait, and this is a very valuable experience and exposure to our students. So first, how we responded first for to the pandemic at the beginning, and when the pandemic started to disrupt the educational activities, we were the first to move to the remote online synchronous format, and this at the beginning, was like first it was like a short-term measure to continue the semester during the spring 2020, and then it appeared that this is something that remains for at least 3 semesters and two summers later on. We had to face first some difficulties. Some of them may be related to the culture and to the prevailing culture and the social framework of the country. Students were, for example, hesitating concerning the cameras, were opening cameras inside their homes, but students really appreciated the fact that we moved quickly to the online and we kept them busy during a period of lockdown, full lockdown in Kuwait. And then during that time, we invested a lot in upgrading this remote learning experience. And we focused on upgrading the course content, the materials to make them more adequate to the online framework and to diversify more the materials used inside the courses, and mainly on the learning activities and how to engage them to ensure social presence and how to make them active inside the virtual classroom. We also reviewed all our assessment system to ensure this. To enhance the integrity of the assessment system, and also we added a lot more virtual experience to the learning, like some virtual lab use. So what mainly was dedicated to the on-campus experience, we could transform some of our labs to more into a virtual labs, and students can access to this lab and access the experience. We also moved many of our students' support services, most of them to online, and we dedicated to respond to students' needs, questions, and sometimes you need to respond to the anxiety by that time. So we created a hotline in our call center, and we created a special online chat tool where we can really react to students' requests. We kept students busy, well engaged online, with a variety of activities. We could offer them sports training online, a lot of conferences. So we offered for the students and for the alumni soft skills courses online, and these were very, very helpful. We offer the virtual job fair, some musical concerts, and we have even organized marathon online. So we try to keep always the community busy and the student busy. We also made a lot of changes in the student recruitment system. We moved our placement test to online, and Even our orientation system is based on the online, and things were changes really upgraded our current practices, and these changes most probably most of them will remain even in the post-COVID. So what is the reality now? Now that we are in the end of the fall 2021 semester. We moved initially to full online for 3 semesters, and now we see ourselves more into a hybrid mode of delivery. And students are very happy to return to campus in a more into a rotation mode. They don't come. They come to campus like they are rotating, not all the time. All the students has to ensure the social distancing on campus, and we kept about 30% of our courses fully online. So what's happening now is that students are really enjoying this new reality, the hybrid learning reality, and they are taking full advantage of the instructional technologies on the what was developed on the online mode, and at the same time they are now taking advantage as well on their presence on campus. Something we should keep in mind that students they don't learn in the same way. So some students really they have preferences on the online, and they prosper more when it comes to this online mode of education. Some others really they do need this social direct interaction in a classroom, and this combination of a new reality happening in the hybrid mode that we are in now, I think students and faculty are really appreciating it. So we have an upgraded courses material, courses content, and we have this mix of format between the being on campus and at the same time being online. And this is something very important, because what we see is now people we have a new teaching and learning environment. We have an interactive community beyond the boundary of the classroom, and students are enjoying this variety of learning and teaching activities, whether happening online or happening or happening on campus. As I said, they're taking full advantage of these 2 modes of delivery. There is something very important that we're working on now, and we noticed it's a major change happening, I think, at the institutional level, and this will enable us and support the institution decision making and how things will progress in the future. Today, with everything being somehow, whether online or whether in a digital mode, or whether at the level of the administration or whether at the level of the learning management system that we have a lot of data that the institution really can use for decision making. So it's a time for digging into this data, whether in the learning and teaching activities happening, whether into how the students' behavior inside this classroom, inside these courses, whether we have this data because we transform most of our procedures and e-forms, everything is on the portal. So students now, most of the services are into online. So we have a lot of data that will allow us to understand more the students' learning preferences or learning difficulties sometimes, and this will allow us, or students, what are the concerns at certain moment of the student, and this will allow us to serve better our students. So we notice that now we have really much more data than before, that the institution, that the people in charge of the administration, people in charge of the head of department, deans, that the people can use to continuously upgrade the educational activities and to continuously upgrade the services at the institution. Another thing that really was a tremendous change happening, that collaboration with institutions, offering some joint degrees programs, or having more guest speakers, international speakers, giving their lectures to the students is becoming easier with this online education. So what is the pandemic created geographical obstacle for people to travel, but at the same time what we noticed that we have more institutional collaboration, more exposure with the international world, and students are really taking more advantage to this international exposure. And this is something very, very important and much more efficient. We noticed as well at the institutional level, like we have a research boom happened during these years, and they continue to happen. And I think the result of it is that not only because the institution is investing more and more into research, but as well because things are becoming more efficient, and faculty, they have more time, I think, for research. So the efficiency is not only at the level of the classroom, class management, because I think now students and faculty, they are taking more advantage of their presence inside the classroom. So the classroom is becoming a place just to reflect, to think more, to interact. And it's not a place where there is a course delivery happening. So there is a new concept of the classroom happening. And at the same time, a lot of the materials are already online. So we're into a world where situation where things are more efficient. And this efficiency created a positive impact also on the research output. And we noticed really during the last 2 years, a positive increase in the research output of faculty, and definitely time efficiency created an important role at this level. So globally, I think what we are now, I think it's like a new reality. I think that in my experience, I saw much more changes happening during these 2 years than the changes happened during my lifetime professional experience before. A lot of things changed, and I don't think that there is a way to go back of 2019 practices. This is a different world. We're into totally a different reality now. And how I see the future, I see it more data-driven, more into virtual reality happening. And we need to be aware that the students' preferences as well are changing. And what we have now is a system which is more adequate to this generation of post-millennial students who, they have their preferences, and they are comfortable with the online mode of this new system of new combination of remote and on campus. And I think these changes will definitely, I'm very positive about the changes happening, and looking forward to see what will be the challenges at the institutional levels. And I believe that institutions should really think strategically and unconventionally about the future, because time is very important. Time to consider and to reconsider what's happening is very important. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Thank you. It's very clear. Thank you. But you forget that you have 3 palms from Eduniversal. Don't forget it.
No, of course not. It's not. Thank you. You have to celebrate this.
Thank you.
Congratulations again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. There is a question from Edson. Edson, he was a member of scientific committee. He was responsible of the Latin American region. He's a dean in the Brazil, and he's very close friend, very, very close colleague. And I think the question is addressed to Dr. Amal. He was, I don't know, Cecile, can you read the question, or let me?
Yes, I don't have the question because Edson sent it directly to Dr. Amal. Perhaps I don't know if you, Dr. Amal, if you can see you are able to see the questions in the chat.
I do, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. My question is, considering that educational inequality is the unequal distribution of academic resources, including but not limited to school funding, qualified and experienced teachers, books, and technologies to socially excluded communities. How do you see the post-pandemic lessons learned by business schools in Qatar, and which changes in educational policies are most evident to be made by both universities and governments? This is a very, very good question and a very serious one. I don't think I'm the dean of the College of Humanities and Social Sciences, and I don't believe that change would come only from business schools. I believe that change would come from the whole ecosystem. So we have to understand that any educational system is very connected to its political, cultural, economic context. And if there's no political will to change and advance, whether internal issues or external issues, and in terms of equality and inequalities, education won't be able to do anything, definitely. There are different things that I think we could do as educational institutions. First of all, we need to really negotiate what resilience means in our context. What does it look like, really? Because does resilience mean, does it mean survival? And we've done well and added to one of our values. Have we survived the pandemic? Is this what resilient means? Definitely not. I don't believe in that. And there is an issue of a mindset, right? So how do we change the mindset from being knowledge, from knowledge transfer to collaborative knowledge production, new knowledge production, where we have to work with students and our society and globally with other institutions and other humans. And I think the global pandemic is the best example. What happened in China just spilled out everywhere else. So we're very connected, right? So that connectedness needs to be embedded in our mindset. And again, like Stephen said, renegotiate our position, renegotiate the educational systems and universities' positions within our societies. What do we need to do? So it's not just the business sector or the business schools duty, because it's not about supply and demand. We need to look at our relationship with the job market and with the industries. What are we trying to do that? Are we really trying to meet the industry's needs or reshape the industries? And what are we trying to create within, because of those industries? Are we trying to create a social cohesion or a social structure that is inclusive for everyone? Those are my thoughts really around this topic. Again, I don't think it's the business school duty. I think it's every single one of us, the duty of every single one of us really within a society and an educational system.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Marwan Salame.
Hello.
Hello, how are you? Okay,
Dr. Azoury, thank you.
Yes,
I am a legal and corporate consultant. I'm a lawyer in Beirut, and I would like to thank Eduniversal and yourself, Dr. Azoury, for this webinar, especially for your work and high spirit during this, despite this financial and crisis in Lebanon. Thank you very much. I would like to have some reflection about two issues. First, pandemic. From my experience in Corona and COVID, I took like 2-3 courses with Coursera, through Coursera with ESSEC and another university in California, one related to wine, and the other one was with ESSEC, very interesting, related to mediation and negotiation. My question is, how long we're gonna stay in this world here in the Middle East and the Arab countries, migrating to the US and to Europe, seeking for higher education? I believe that we have the spirit that, I don't know if education there, it's better than here, or it's the reputation. After Sputnik and the education revolution in the States, the USA went so far. I don't know if the States and Qatar, Dr. Amal or Dr. Yahchouchi, I know you are in private institutions. The States are funding a kind of revolution in this regard, especially now that you have the Emirates, they went with the satellite. Are you not, I don't know if countries there are eager to have a real revolution on the education system, in the education system, one. And why not take this development and all this internet and online education to move with this revolution. Funding is the problem. What is the problem? Why I'm a Lebanese sitting in Lebanon. I took 2-3 courses with Americans and Europeans online. How we will find a way not to immigrate or to go study over there overseas, not to stay here, especially that the market in the Gulf region is welcoming us after finishing our higher education in the state and in Europe. So they see us in a different way. Where is the real problem in this? Thank you.
Thank you,
Dr.
Marwan. Okay, I let George or Dr. Amal to answer.
Okay, I'll start, if you don't mind. First of all, it's a very important question, and I think this kind of debate about the migration of the youth to continue their higher education from the Middle East and abroad, this is it's a very multi-variable issues, and it's I don't think we can generalize about what's happening in the entire Middle East. I think this is more contextual to different countries. What's happening in Lebanon is different of what's happening in Kuwait. What's happening in Kuwait is totally different, I believe, than happening in other countries. So it's a very, very, very sophisticated matter. But I consider positively the future of higher education, at least in maybe in the Middle East and in the MENA region. We can see that if we look just at the ranking of universities, we see more and more universities from the MENA region becoming between the top universities in the world. So we see great things happening at the level of higher education. I think I see in Kuwait as well higher education institutions, but if I consider, for example, at AUM, we offer a high quality educational programs in engineering and in business, and we offer in a very international diverse framework on campus, where this internationalization, so people seeking this international experience, it can be done on campus. But again, I think there is always a positive thing with this, mobility of students, let's say, in moving whether to Europe or to the US. This will also create enrich the human capital of a certain country, and this is considered very, very, very positively. So I think I see that things are moving very positively at the level of the Middle East, MENA region as well, for the institutions. As for the movement of this human capital and for the youth, it's definitely should more be things at the level of every country and the context of every country.
Excuse me, can we speak about the revolution in the Arab country in the Gulf region on education level? Do we have this spirit? Can we feel it, like in tourism and business and everything? The states have the power of money. I don't know if I don't see it from my side. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see it from my side. Do they fund? Do they invest in education? They are concerned. They have this will.
I think, I don't know, but I think in the Arab country, they not in Lebanon, we don't have money. Maybe we need the support of Amal and Dr. Yahchouchi for our university. Okay, but in the Arab country, yes, I think
why
so.
Why not joint venture with?
Why a joint venture? Okay, a poor man with a rich man. Okay, but I don't
know if we have time. I just want to say quickly to Marwan, definitely, at least from my point of view and from my context, there has been a huge reform in education in Qatar. whereas you know, a huge investment has been put in higher education, well, in education from K to 12, but also in higher education. And the best example, and I don't want to sound like I'm promoting it, but it is actually Education City that has 9 universities, some of which are world-class universities like Georgetown, Carnegie Mellon, VCU, and the university I belong to is the only local university within this ecosystem. And what we do is definitely within what I'm talking about. I'm not preaching, you know, I'm not preaching something that I don't, you know, we don't actually apply to ourselves. So our concept of education is education degrees, definitely, which you would find, but also integrating education into the community and translating that education into tangible results. Not just feeding the job market, which we are definitely doing, but we're feeding the job market, for example, women engineers, right? Something that not just breaks the stereotype and not just empowers women, but also diversifies the job market, also diversifying economy by teaching different fields, but also the whole idea of the long life learning, Marwan, which we also believe in and apply in Education City. You would see lots of professional development and executive education. So I encourage you to look at our website. But let me tell you, we're also committed to the UN's SDGs. So we take access to education at heart. We offer scholarships to students from different parts of the world, full scholarships, especially from conflict zones. In my college, for example, I've got scholarships just for students within of course, the MENA region that come from conflict zones, let alone SDG 5, you know, gender equality and so yes, there is a huge investment. I see it in Qatar definitely because I feel it, and I'm a product of that investment to begin with, because I am, after all, a Qatari, and I'm the only Qatari dean in Education City. So please do look at our website, but also you see it in Kuwait on a less level because of the economy, but you see it also in the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia. So it is across the Gulf region, given that they're blessed with the wealth, as you said.
Thank you, Dr. Amal. It's very clear. Any other question?
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other question?
We have a question from Nada.
Nada, okay. Nada Sarkis. Dr. Sarkis.
So the question is, good afternoon. It is very clear that most of the recommendations are towards blended learning. Would this be the new reality post-COVID, and will be seeing more shift towards digital learning?
For who this is question?
Dr. Steve, if you can answer. Hello, everyone. I'm Nada. So,
okay. Can you present yourself,
Sure.
Nada?
Yeah, definitely. I'm Nada Sarkis. I'm the Associate Dean of the ISAC Business School, and I've been the student of Dr. Nehme Azoury as well.
Sure, I'd be happy to weigh in on this big question. It's an important one on people's minds because, of course, what we're experiencing COVID-19 is the notion that digital learning is probably going to surpass many of our prior expectations and become a norm more than anything. And blended learning is now part of our language. It's part of our expectations going forward. The future really holds, I think, a lot of unknowns. And I think this is one of them, to the prevalence of these two forms. And what blended learning really means is going to evolve and change through time. Some of the things that we're questioning, and I think this is going to impact you, the answer to this question is, how much and in what forms do we value human interaction? I think the human interaction, the notion of what human interaction means is now being defined and redefined. And that's going to impact learning to a large extent as well, too, because what we've seen so far is a reactive measure of using digital learning and virtual learning as an opportunity to deal with the circumstances as they are. But as we have an opportunity to mold our future and people have an opportunity to weigh in on how they best learn and how they most want to learn and socially interact, I think the answers to these questions will become more evident. There is some thinking out there that I tend to agree with, is that there will be a parsing in time where digital learning will be for more of those subject matters and issues that are quickly learned and distilled from a piece of digital content, and that we will learn to much more efficiently put learning into categories of digital learning and those that require a great amount of interaction. To Giles's point earlier, that one of their discoveries is that, and this is true of many institutions, is that they are now considering classroom time to be valuable, but completely different than what classroom time used to mean years ago. So really what we may now have is opportunities for social interaction, exchange, innovative thinking and building as the reason why we meet, and that learning in the traditional sense that we think about learning occurs largely, if not even in some cases exclusively, through some form of digital learning. So a lot of unknowns, but a lot of things that are emerging as very likely. I think it's quite exciting, to be honest, because finally the world has now been faced with what we've always known is a great opportunity for distilling learning in more efficient ways. I may have not have addressed this directly, but indirectly, I hope I gave you some indicators as to what's important.
Thank you so much. I have another additional question for you as well. You were questioning in your intervention the current structure of our programs, like how do we say that it's a 90 credit degree or more, etc. But there is this drive towards accreditation, and every business school are seeking accreditation. And I think those bodies, they do set standards for that, and they push us to meet them. So don't you think the change should happen there before we try to do this?
That's a very good point. And very good point. And I've been involved in accreditation with ACSB and others, and I've always been very careful at pointing out that, you know, they're dealing with the best, and governments are dealing with the best information they have available. The knowledge that we have now is structuring a degree by credits makes a lot of sense. But I think both governments in time, but ACSB sooner than governments, would probably recognize that there are other ways of shaping a degree, and that they would be more than willing, in accreditation agencies. But there has to be a force. There has to be a decision on the part of the actors on society to say, let's restructure what we think. To a certain extent, that is occurring right now naturally, and accreditation is reacting, where the degree program is becoming fragmented into what we call stackable degrees, right? The notion is that you can form a degree by smaller units of learning and certification. So these are approximations at change. They are not full force pushes at change. Those approximations may eventually lead to change. So you're quite right. One of the biggest bulwarks right now, one of the biggest blocks, are our government policies and our accreditation standards. They're there to protect us, but they're also there to keep us the way that we've always been. Exactly. So to a certain extent, standardization creates lack of change. Innovation. And it creates conformity.
True.
Thank you, Nada. Thank you. We have a question of Dr. Ahmad Jamal. Professor Jamal was the former director of higher education in Lebanon. He has an excellent experience working with accreditation with university all over the Arab country. He's making his PhD in France, and he's a close friend. And I was surprised to see you here, Dr. Ahmad.
Thank you, Dr. Nehme. I'm happy to see you also, to see my dear friend, George, Amal. Hope you are going all well. I would like to comment a little bit, if it is possible. Not a question.
Yes, possible, okay. Sure.
2 points concerning, first of all, the higher education in the Gulf countries. I have participated to most of the conferences of ministers responsible of higher education in the Arab world. The orientation in the Arab countries was to develop the private sector, which is important in the Gulf countries, and this answer is for, I think, for Marwan, who asked about, is that they regulate well the private sector. Accreditation is important. They created their proper independent higher education quality assurance agencies, and they well regulated their private sector, which is important. And I believe that countries in the Arab country and the Gulf countries support private higher education sector indirectly, by paying for, for resident students, etc., as in Lebanon, when the employers pay for the country. in general, if you look for the number of higher education institutions in the Arab Gulf countries, since 2000, the first conference of higher education, it was in Beirut, that decided that we must develop the higher education sector. The number has been multiplied by hundreds in the Arab countries, in Qatar, in Kuwait, in UAE, Emirates Arab. Anyway, the most important that if you look in these countries, you have a very well structured quality assurance agencies, very independent, and they are very serious. And they look for everything. They look for the institutional structure. They have what we call the institutional accreditation, and they have the program accreditation, and which is very important. Secondly, I would like to talk about blended learning, the future of blended learning. I believe that blended learning begins before the pandemic. Blended learning and online learning. The difficulties was that governments in the Arab world didn't recognize this kind of education. And there was a kind of, if I can say this, a kind of war against this kind of, even in Lebanon, you know. I was convinced that online education and blended learning is important. And I proposed in Lebanon even a draft law. George knows that. He participated with us, Dr. George Yahchouchi, when he was in Lebanon. We worked on a draft law to authorize blended learning and online learning. Now with the pandemic, the most important that governments begin to make regulations for this kind. Regulations at the level of licensing, regulation at the level of accreditation, recognition, all these aspects, which is very important. I believe that as blended learning and online learning begins before the pandemic, it will continue and it will be more. And I believe that, you know, blended learning and online learning, if it is well done and well accredited, it's sometimes better than the face-to-face learning, you know, because staff are obliged to prepare well their courses, they are obliged to prepare well their evaluation and their assessment for the students, and they are obliged to continue what we call this kind of communication, direct communication with all the students. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jamal. Thank you, Cecile. Thank you, Steve, Amal, George Yahchouchi, the audience. I think it's a good coffee break. We take it virtually. We hope one day we will sit together and we'll take the coffee. This is the first one in the Middle East region. I hope we will prepare the next one maybe in 1 month. Hope to see you again, Steve, Amal, George. Thank you, Cecile, for everything. Okay, thank you, George.
Thank you, Nehme. Thank you so much. And thank you, Cecile, as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Amal. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, George. Thank you, Nehme. And thanks to all the participants to make this session so lively and useful. For sure, we come back with a lot of inspiring experiences and opinions and visions. Thank you very much. And as you know, Eduniversal is really implicated and really wants to keep in contact, because you know for sure that we are always thinking about the new kind of tools we can create, we can build to be useful to all the system all over the world. And these sessions are also useful for us, for the scientific committee, to find new ways to help. And what has been said about standards and the impact of the standardization is really in the heart of our preoccupation since the first beginning. That's why our methodology, our rankings are built this way. So it's very interesting to hear all this and to nourish our reflection with all these feedbacks. So thank you very much. Have a nice afternoon. And if we have no opportunity to see, hello, Edson.
From São Paulo.
So I wish you a very, very nice and Merry Christmas and happy holidays for those who are going to have fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy holidays to everyone.
Happy holidays. Thank you.
Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.